Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. This little talk was given some time ago at the invitation of the United Arab Emirates, who put on a public webinar to announce changes that were being brought in positively by the government on innovation and innovation policy post-COVID. And I was invited to give this very interesting talk on open innovation, and I was delighted to do so. And I started by welcoming my audience to Cambridge, from where I was speaking, as indeed I am today. An ancient city indeed, Cambridge. More recently, though, very much a centre of progress in innovation and economic development, as we know. A wonderful place for those of us that live here. There's King's College and the River Cam, and there are 31 colleges. We all know that Cambridge is known for academic excellence. We won't boast about it, but it is a reality, and a wonderful reality. And here's another nice picture of Cambridge. This is St. John's College Bridge. It's a beautiful and historic city and a great centre of learning, but more recently, open innovation has opened many doors, and Cambridge has developed into one of the very, very fast-moving entrepreneurial ecosystems that we've seen develop in the world. So I was very pleased and privileged to be sharing with my colleagues and friends in the UAE and people from other parts of the world in the hope that these talks that we have between ourselves will lead to greater cross-border collaborations. It was a short talk. We had only time to hit some of these headlines, a definition of open innovation and how it has impacted in Cambridge and elsewhere. And then towards the end, some thoughts about some of the positive things that the terrible COVID-19 pandemic may have left us with. And it's not a bad thing to have a reminder that the Royal Society in the UK has described this time in which we live as a century of science. So we should feel very privileged to be armed with technology much more powerful than we ever dreamed of some time ago. And the context for this talk is, of course, the digital revolution. And thanks to this man, Tim Berners-Lee, we have the World Wide Web, we have the internet, we have all the advantages of connectedness, connectivity, connectedness with energy, and open innovation couldn't happen if it weren't for that. How much has the internet changed the world, and how much more have we to come? There are academic definitions of open innovation, and one of the great leaders of the academic part of this story is Chesbrough. And there it is, inflows and outflows of knowledge to accelerate internal innovation and expand the markets for external use of innovation. And there have been many publications and lots of papers. But for me, open innovation is practice and not theory. And definitions can be bland. My view is that it's all about human interaction, because for me, open innovation starts with mindset. Just a little chart here to show those that perhaps are not so familiar what we mean by open innovation. Here is the funnel of a large company which is doing research and developing products from the research and commercializing them, as we see along the top. And at the beginning of the funnel, there are lots of projects. And of course, at the end, there are few, because not so many get through the process and into the market. And historically, companies have tended to keep all of this internally and to themselves. But open innovation concept says, why not? As we see the arrows telling us here, bring in ideas and technology to the funnel. Why not bring in intellectual property? Why not license stuff in? And then if we find we've invented something we don't need, why not license it out? And why not augment our product range with others brought in from outside? And if we find something really good that might be developed into a company, why not spin it out? And the concepts of open innovation are the concepts of partnership and sharing, not just competitiveness. But we do all need competitiveness too, and a balance can be struck. And companies large and small and institutions can be involved, and geographic borders can be crossed. And some of you may say, yes, but really, is it likely that companies can work together and share knowledge in these ways? What about ownership and intellectual property? I can tell you that in practice, it can be done. It might not always be done, but it can be done more often than not. And one of the champion companies of open innovation over the years have been Nokia, a large corporate. And see what they say here. We can do so much more and come to the market with more interesting products at the end of the day if our business model allows inflows and outflows. We work with smaller companies, we help them, they help us. Sometimes they market the product, sometimes we do. So the large and the small in synergistic relationships working together. I'd like to take a step back here to consider some more important basics. Here are three very pervasive technology platforms: biotechnology and the subsets, information technology, nanotechnology and the subsets. And these kinds of technology platforms do exist close together in certain parts of the world. Cambridge is one, but there are others. And where they do interweave, as we see on the chart there, open innovation enables people to transfer the knowledge in their heads, the tacit knowledge that we might not write down or we might not have spoken about at a meeting. And where the convergence of technology takes place and people work together, and the digital revolution helps all of this, of course, we see a great enhancement for innovation and more new companies can be formed. So we could think of it as an innovation campus where R&D and education and applications through companies are all working together, where innovation, symbiosis, synergy, knowledge transfer happen and new companies thrive through open innovation. The role of universities, of course, is key and always has been, and the effective commercialization of research depends on these concepts, in my experience, of open innovation. Now, thinking of Cambridge, centuries of outstanding research, yes, lots of Nobel Prize winners. Some of them are named there: Newton, Crick, Watson, Darwin. Many ideas that changed the world, but historically, not to the great benefit of Cambridge, the region, or the nation. R&D was great, but innovation is something different and additive, isn't it? So R&D alone costs money. It doesn't necessarily create good. It might not create wealth. Innovation is needed to put things together. And things have changed in Cambridge, and open innovation is now operating in a big way. I've been living and working here for 50 years, and I have seen a mindset change starting about 60 years ago. And from 1991, when we had the internet, accelerating, where people have been more open-minded, where brain circulation has happened, and open innovation and thinking has taken place, enabling people to do even better than they might have done before. Now, Gibbons and the lady Anne Saxenian in Berkeley, Gibbons in Stanford, Martin Hinnell in Leuven, give us this list of characteristics if we ask the question, what are the elements that need to come together to make real open innovation work? And you can read them from the slide. I'm not going to read them all out. I've added one or two points of mine here. Minds without borders, global mindset. And I note that these kinds of centers in the world are of a certain scale where the population is small enough that people can communicate very readily indeed. The critical factors are, however, people. People, connectivity, being joined up. And one of the things that's made a lot of difference here is the development of science parks and innovation centers. And we read a lot about these things happening particularly in Silicon Valley and on the east coast of the USA, but they have happened elsewhere. And Cambridge is one of those places where we have seen it happen. Because science parks and innovation centres have flourished here. We have, I think, more than any other location in the UK, about 25 now. Some of them are listed here, not all of them. Some are generalists, some are specialised. And when momentum begins to move forward in a place like Cambridge, and numbers of new companies, very excellent new companies, are being generated outside the place, around the world, some of the larger companies that are big on innovation see what's happening. And as we can see in Cambridge, many larger organizations have brought their people and their money here to join in the process of development of what we call the Cambridge phenomenon. And more science parks and innovation centers are planned here. And over the years, here's what we've seen happen in terms of the emergence of the technology cluster. You can see across the top the numbers of high-tech jobs that have been created, and within the main body of the chart, you can see how more and more innovative technologies have been brought to bear to create more and more innovative companies. Now, I made this slide in 2004, and I would say, not because of anything I personally had just done, but because of what a lot of people had done, the future had become reality by 2014. The future as you see it on that slide. And now, of course, we'd have to add in more things: artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, VAR, and augmented reality became and have become increasingly strong features of the Cambridge cluster. And as I said, science parks have been important, and we've seen the evolution of numbers of different life stage locations. Very important. When companies grow and they move from laboratory to marketplace, they need different premises, they need different skills, and we've seen the proliferation of numbers of different centres in Cambridge to accommodate that need. Here's a picture of one of our more recent innovation centres. It's the Bradfield Centre on Trinity Science Park. Trinity was the first science park in Europe, actually, started in 1970. It's grown a lot since then. And this new innovation centre is state of the art. Lots of places for entrepreneurs to start their technology businesses. It's now fully occupied, and it's one of 25, as I said. I mentioned inward investment earlier. And one of the other things we've seen on Trinity Science Park is we have some very important incoming investment partners. Tsinghua University of Beijing have brought 200 million of investment, and they have developed this wonderful bioscience center now. And it's already developing new technologies and new products, which of course will also be exploited in China and around the world. A great development. We've had also a lot more Chinese investments in Cambridge from computer games companies, and Huawei, as I say on the slide, have acquired a high-tech company, created a European R&D center, and are now investing up to probably something like 100 million in a new factory. And whilst all this has been going on, of course, I couldn't underestimate the importance of people power. And networking has been an extraordinary part of the process of the development of the Cambridge phenomenon. And I do advise all my students, please don't just sit in your labs and think and invent things in your mind. Get out and about and meet people. This is just a picture of how people and companies can get together and create open innovation. And what we might see happening if we put everything together, if we look at the segments of industry here, life sciences, agri-tech, medtech, clean tech, if we join them all up as the chart shows here, and we then connect them with universities, with teaching, with R&D, with investors, with professional services, and I'm not suggesting we've done it perfectly here, but when it comes to look a bit like that, we can, I think, claim that we have created an effective joined up entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we have a wonderful organization in Cambridge that helps this happen, the Cambridge Network. So what we might say in Cambridge is that we believe, it's not perfect, but we do have something of a joined up system and society where all the bits are connected in a way that makes more things happen. And connectricity, not just connectivity, connectedness with energy is abroad. And we in Cambridge are only one example of open innovation having developed a cluster of creativity. Here's a picture of the AstraZeneca new headquarters. They, like some of those other large companies, have brought their R&D and a lot of their people here. And that building now exists. It isn't quite functional yet, but it will be soon. And it will become part of the largest biomedical campus that we see in Europe. A wonderful development. Now, just to summarize, a reminder here too, that Cambridge is a small city. The population is about 130,000. Lots of them are students. Around us in the greater Cambridge area, perhaps 650,000. And in the whole of the east of England, 6.5 million. But what's happened here over the 50 or 60 years that I've been here is that we've seen the emergence of almost 5,000 knowledge-based companies, technology companies, a lot of jobs created, a lot of value created. And we have 19 companies today that are valued at more than $1 billion US, which seems to be a benchmark that people look for. 2 at 10 billion, 1 Arm Holdings at 40 billion. And the economy grew in the last measured year at 9% here. So we've seen lots of change. And open innovation locally and in global outreach has been a very key factor. The university has an outstanding now venture fund, a university venture fund of about 200 million, and much more inward investment is coming. We believe in 2019 it was as much as 1 billion US, and lots of potential for cross-border collaboration. In my talk, I emphasized what more we might do with the UAE, and I'd like to think we can do more with many other places around the world connecting Cambridge up. What about COVID-19? How terrible it has been. The health systems devastated worldwide, but lots of other things were disrupted too. The barriers to progress to make new medical products happen and to move to deal with the virus, and digital technology has been at the fore of this, has been a positive outcome of a terrible pandemic. And what I've seen happening in the UK and elsewhere, but particularly here, is inventors and developers developing more things to help the situation more quickly. And I've seen the regulatory authorities and the government and the investors moving faster, cutting red tape, not cutting safety standards, but making things happen more rapidly. And I believe that some of the changes that have happened will definitely be enduring, and we will see good coming out of bad at the end of the day. A wonderful example of cross-border, cross-continental open innovation, cross-functional open innovation has been the way in which vaccines have been developed in less than a year. Less than a year. Unbelievable a year ago that this could have happened. A wonderful example, in my opinion, of open innovation. And other things too, the use of artificial intelligence for testing and tracking in terms of dealing with the pandemic. Taiwan and New Zealand have done a wonderful job, rather better than our own country here. But excellent information has enabled the pandemic to be kept at least somewhat in check while the vaccines were delivered. So, the here and now is the year of the virus. And I say that the pandemic and the crisis has actually disrupted positively as well as negatively and has stimulated transformation in thinking processes, accelerated innovation, and digital technology has played a big part in that. And much of the positive change, in my view, will be enduring. So I thank you for listening, and I thank the UAE for making this little talk possible. And I hope in the future I will be able to communicate with you on this subject and others as the future unfolds. Thank you so much. Goodbye for now.